Hey listeners, especially those of you who live in the San Antonio area, you got to save the date. Mark the date, September 7th, 2023, a leadership conference with the theme God and Country. Special speaker, General Jerry Boykin. September 7th, 2023.
So I'd say it starts with a vision for what does the end game, that health look like, and then back plan from there, and then try to create rhythms that support that outcome, systems, disciplines that buy that down, and then run and work those plays. And so for me, for how we lead at Vapor, our goal is to have spiritual, professional, and personal growth and health. And so if you were to run down that lane, like, what is my spiritual vision for myself and my family? What is my physical vision for myself and my family? What does that look like? And then we actually have vision around that. We have a family vision statement and mission statement and values. And we do time, talent, treasure, and influence planning. And there's scripture attached to that and vision attached to that. What's the end game? What's the end goal? So I think the first thing for me is like, answer the why. Like, why are you doing it in the first place?
Micah, great to see you, and welcome to the Today Counts show. I'm excited to have you on.
Glad to be with you.
Hey, we got a lot to talk about. I'm so excited to introduce you and your organization and your mission and your vision to our listeners. But I'm also not going to let you off the hook today without talking about leadership. And you know, I'm going to prop this up in a way that I think is due. And the work that you're doing is truly top shelf. That's obvious to see. You know, and I've done my own research. You don't know me that well yet. We did have a steak together, but I've done my research, and there's a lot of folks that have some amazing things to say about you. But talk to us about Vapor. Talk to us about your organization, what you are about. How did it start? I'm just going to turn the microphone over to you, and just want to hear a little bit of your heart and catch everybody up for those who don't know you.
Yeah, so Vapor Ministries, we meet needs, feed souls, elevate God. So we're serving in the poorest places on planet Earth, extreme poverty, and we're seeking to meet needs, right? Care for the poorest of the poor, alleviate poverty. So that's food, water, education, health services. We want to feed souls, connect people to a living relationship with Christ. It's evangelism, it's discipleship. And at the end of the day, we want to do that in a way that brings glory to God, that makes his name great. And so as a ministry, we are serving the poorest of the poor and seeking to bring those ends about.
And where is most of this ministry occurring right now, Micah?
We work in East Africa, West Africa, and Haiti. And when I say we have 631 team members globally. Mostly indigenous team members, and we're working in those regions, those locales.
And yeah, that's awesome to hear that. But how did you get started? I mean, you look like a red-blooded American as much as I am. You know, probably a Metro guy. I don't know where it all started. But how did you get into this?
Well, I tell people, if you survive dying, it changes how you live. Mm-hmm. That's definitely been the case for me. So God taught me very personally that life is like a vapor. On October 9th, 1995, I dove into a wave, shattered 4 vertebrae in my neck, was found face down in the ocean 5 to 7 minutes after having dove in. I had drifted about 150 yards. And when I was found, I was totally quadriplegic. And I was dead. By the grace of God, he wasn't done with the dead man, and he allowed me to receive life fresh. And with that, a wake-up call, right? At the end of the day, life is a vapor, whether you like it or not. The question is, will you invest it or waste it? And God put a passion in my heart to invest versus waste my vapor, and Vapor, the ministry, Vapor Ministries, eventually kind of rose out of that dying, that story.
Hmm. How old were you when that accident happened?
That 15, 16 age.
15,
So
16, and then it continued just to grow and blossom into this conviction about the brevity of life and purpose but how did it end up where it did? How did it end up serving the poor, serving those right now in Africa? How did it end up in that place? Because you could have applied it in a lot of different ways. How did that happen?
yeah, I'd say a few key events. I think some of that you hit on in your question. But there was brokenness that came out of it. I was in the hospital for the better part of 3 months, 2.5, 3 months. I was in rehab for an extended period, several years. And so in that refiner's fire, um, there was a lot of reshaping me, also helping me relate to a whole subset of our world, people that are struggling every day to survive, people that are marginalized, people that are just broken. And so I think part of the breaking of the neck and the going through an extensive period of chronic pain and unique challenges related to rehab and so on and so forth were really a period of forming and shaping in me the ability to relate to people that I hadn't even met yet. And so that was foundational. You fast forward, I started, my degree was in intercultural studies. And so cultural anthropology,
Okay.
learning about human issues, learning about academically extreme poverty. The people try to survive on less than 125 a day. And so there was this educational period where my mind was and spirit was getting connected with these realities. And then you have experientially, I ended up playing college soccer, which is another story. But we were serving in an inner city context in urban poverty, and so I was getting to missionally reach out to people in environments that were very tough, and those were all preparatory. I mean, in those moments in time, in those seasons, there was meaningful ministry, meaningful activity, but there was also a schooling that was happening, and it was a preparing me for something that I was about to step into. And so in '05, I ended up flying over on my freshman year of grad school, to visit and to see what it was like to live inside the context of a slum. I flew over to East Africa, stayed for a month with indigenous people in their community. And it was during that time that statistics became names and faces, poverty became personal, and my mind and my heart connected in a unique way. And I came back from that that intimate encounter with extreme poverty, knowing that I was going to spend the rest of my life trying to forget what I saw, or spend the rest of my life trying to do something about it. And wrestling in that tension, God birthed the vision for Vapor. And so I dropped out of school, moved into my car, lived in my car for 8 months, and the journey was on. Vapor was begun.
Wow. Lived in your car. Now let's go to the end user for a minute. You told us about where they are, but what is the interaction, the daily interaction between Vapor and these folks that you are ministering to? Take us there as if I got on a plane and you were going to walk me through.
Yeah, so we have 631 team members that are serving hundreds of thousands of people on a weekly basis.
Hundreds of thousands. Okay.
Yeah, and so those services that are being provided are they're meeting needs, right? They're poverty alleviating, and they're comprised of food, water, education, and health services. So we're an access point for clean drinking water. We're a service hub for meeting critical needs and providing disease prevention, detection, avoidance training, health related services. We're a hub for helping those in the community that cannot access school get the schooling through our sponsorships. So food, water, education, health services. But also at the center, we have full-fledged life on life disciple making and we're using the platform of the sport of choice. So you have sports-based discipleship outreach. We run self-contained leagues. So in these communities where many times there's a passion for a game, but the kids lack the ability oftentimes to play their sport of choice, we're able to harness that passion and create a space to make disciples. And then we have small businesses that we own and operate that create products and jobs locally that serve the local people.
So that's fascinating. It sounds a little overwhelming from an organizational place. How are you organized? Describe that to me. And you just shared a little bit about funding, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But how are you organized? How do you make this happen?
Yeah, so I would say, like, from a program delivery standpoint, we think about it in social, spiritual, and economic impact, right? So we're providing social impact to the community, right? Poverty alleviating impact, water, food, education, health services. From a spiritual impact, it's disciple making through the sport of choice. Through economic impact, it's putting in small businesses and then passing along knowledge to help others create small businesses and using that as a platform of the gospel. So we think about the holistic community impact that's going on. We think about it through the lens of social, spiritual, and economic impact, and we're measuring impact and output and programming, tuning up programming through that lens. If you're talking more structurally, how are we structurally organized? There's all of our activities roll into 7 departments, and those departments then roll into 4 divisions, and then those divisions roll into me. So I don't know if you're talking more about structural organization, like our human resource outlay and how we organize that, but I'll let you press in if you want me to go one way or another.
Yeah, no, you're doing great. You're doing great. Give me a good picture of things. Now, how? So you're operating a significant sized organization. Where did you learn to do that? How did that happen?
Yeah, I would say a mixture of supernatural revelation, right? So the Spirit of God is good to enlighten the minds and hearts of His people in accordance with the purpose that He has called them to walk in. And so definitely, just God's Word and His Spirit giving wisdom and guidance. I also believe in His Word, He tells us in the multitude of wise counselors, there's much wisdom. And the keys there are a multitude of, not just one, and wise. They have to, need to actually have something to offer. And so we've tried to set ourselves up with a board of advisors, board of directors, and experts, subject matter experts that have skills and wisdom and insight in areas that can help us growth hack and get ahead. And so that has been another way. And then like living underneath good leaders. So whether that's reading, whether that's podcasts, whether that's one-on-one mentoring, structurally, obviously we have through the board paradigm, but also like just independent of that. I'm listening every morning when I work out. I'm consuming either spiritual or leadership content, resources, and we're just a high learning environment at Vapor, and I try myself to continue to grow in wisdom and stature.
Something that I noticed on your website that I don't see very often is you not only feature your board of directors, your board of advisors, but also your previous board members. I'm just curious, what led you to that idea in honoring those that have served in the past?
I'd say a couple things. Not every previous board member is on there, but
Okay.
I'd say a couple things. One, we're standing on the shoulders of a bunch of other men and women who have invested in a variety of ways, and I want to honor and celebrate that in general, right? And I think that transcends this entity in this conversation. As believers, we're standing on the shoulders not only of those that under the Spirit of God penned the scriptures, right? And we should honor them, but those that lived in between Paul and you and I today. And I think we in our context, and I think for me too, can get really excited about our unique contributions and how we're we're disruptors and we're so inventive, but the reality is nothing we have ultimately originates with us. Every good thing is a gift from God, and we are the benefactors of the wisdom, the resources, the entrusting of finances from just so many other people. So I want to be able to communicate, hey, while I lead the entity and I get a lot of credit because of that, like, here's the people that are serving in a variety of capacities. Here's the people that are sewing in and platform their contributions as well.
You know, one of the principles that I believe in, I don't even say believe in, that I have observed both in my life and in the life of other leaders who are getting some stuff done, is they have the ability to ask, A-S-K, the ability to ask. And that seems very apparent in everything that you're doing. I don't think these people necessarily just show up on your front door. You've obviously have had to relate to them, get close to them, virus them with the vision, and ask. Talk to me about your journey of that. It's one thing to have a conviction yourself about something that you believe you are called to do, but then to bring others along. Do you have a story there? Is there just something pragmatic about you in that way? What's going on there?
Well, I believe it's our responsibility to cast compelling vision, and I don't always do the best at that, but really, be able to just cast the vision of, hey, here's what's going on. Here's the problem, but here's what could be, and then invite people to prayerfully consider joining, right? And I think to do that, we've got to know practically what is it that they're joining, and how is it that they could join, how is it they could load lift, and it's my responsibility to create mission friendly opportunities that would make sense for people to join, and then as God brings people along that may fit those opportunities, then ask them to ask God if that's something they should do. So I don't know if I'm hitting on exactly what you're saying, but I think key components are: is there a vision worth bringing to reality, and then are there opportunities that are framed up that people could actually do something practical to bring that to bear, and then is the Spirit of God leading them to join, and it's my responsibility to step in and make that invitation and ask them to listen to God's Spirit if He indeed is calling them to engage.
No, I think we're on the hunt. Let me ask you another question. So, again, back to my comment, they don't just show up on your front door. Maybe somebody does. I don't know, but I'm sure the majority doesn't. How do you find these people? Let's just talk in street terms. How do you, you meet them, you say to yourself, huh, that's an interesting person. You engage them in some way as you kind of hit the rewind button. And maybe I'm the first one who's ever asked you this, I don't know, but when you hit the rewind button and you examine in your mind's eye how you have put together this board of directors, this board of advisors, the previous ones, not to mention others that we can get involved with, technical people in the field, all of those kinds of things. I think there's a leadership lesson here to be learned. If I were to press in on you, Mike, and say, okay, maybe you do it intuitively, maybe you don't, but I'm going to press in on you. How did you do it? How did you get these people on board?
Yeah, so I think there's a few ways maybe of approaching that. I think it is important for me to say that ultimately I don't think I'm the one getting them on board. That I'm looking for divine appointments, I'm looking for divine flow, and I'm seeking to partner with what God is doing. And if this is God's vision, and then He's going to bring His people and His resources to it, and I'm kind of amalgamating and shepherding versus making things happen through Micah made it happen. So I think with that foundation laid, it's very important for me to lay that, because I can't convince anybody to do anything, and if I do, I have to convince them to keep doing it, and that's very challenging. So I'm looking for divine flow. I'm looking for divine appointments, and then I think maybe one of the keys is I'm actually am looking. So it's first is the heads up, and do I know what God has called us to? Do I believe in it? Do I know some of the needs that are there to make it happen? Am I looking? And then am I able to see a divine appointment? Now, very pragmatically, I speak in different businesses. I speak in different churches. I'm traveling in different contexts, and in all those places there are people, and I'm casting vision in those places. And as people are responding, whether that's side conversations afterwards and or you know, a connection that someone makes, there is in the back of my mind, Lord, you're bringing the people to accomplish your mission, and I'm supposed to steward that and show. So is this a divine appointment, or is this a distraction? And help me, foster that relationship, foster next steps, in a way that's mutually beneficial. I don't want to spend my time trying to waste somebody else's time by talking them into something that doesn't flow out of something that is God's calling them to or is satisfying them, right? And I've done a lot of that, trying to get somebody to believe in something that they don't believe in.
Yes.
But at the same time, if somebody is primed and ready and their heart is looking for something to be engaged in, I want to be ready and willing to say, well, hey, here's my number. This is what this looks like. We can follow up in this way and be action oriented.
That's really good, Micah. There's a word that comes to mind just listening to you describe it. And it's curiosity. That it sounds like you have a vein of curiosity that God gave you, where for you to even ask the question, I wonder if this thing that's happening right now, this person, this opportunity, is a God thing. Is it something that God is doing? And it's not necessarily that you're calling it that or claiming that, but you're at least asking, I wonder if this is what God is doing. It kind of reminds me, I'm dating myself now, but it kind of reminds me on Henry Blackaby's work a long, long time ago called Experiencing God. And his theology / philosophy was, God is always working. Our job is to recognize what he's doing and join him in it, versus you not taking the bait of how you made this happen. But through your curiosity, you're going, I wonder why. And that is a fascinating way to live, isn't it? Where you can have your head up, kind of like a point guard on a basketball team or a center midfielder in soccer, or really anybody in soccer, right? Who has their head up, seeing what's happening on the field, where, your walk with God is so secure. It's like dribbling a soccer ball with your head up so that you can see, what's going on. Not to create spiritual elitism, but that would be, a great idea, wouldn't it, for us to do that? You have thrift stores in the States, I believe. That is a income producing opportunity, for your mission, which I thought was, when I learned about that, when we had dinner together, I just thought, I haven't been able to shake it since. I'm going, it's a fascinating idea. What are some of the businesses overseas that you have that you referred to before?
Yes. So overseas, we have a business called Kisani Market. They're goods that are made by people in extreme poverty that we then in turn sell here. And so some of our team members are employed in making leather goods for us. We employ them, and they make high-end products that we brand and sell. So we have Kisani Market. We have a commercial gardening operation. We have a organic banana farm. We've got an organic lime plantation. So we have a host of agriculturally centered offerings and businesses. And then we have rentals and gyms and whatnot. At each center it's we're assessing in that environment, how can you assist people economically in a slum-based economy, and what are the opportunities to serve people and employ people in that, and then from that we're able to stand up the small businesses that meet those needs and employ those individuals, and then hope that they are successful, work towards that end, and the ones that are successful we sustain, and those that don't make it, we ultimately obviously would phase out. But those are some of the businesses we have.
In your annual income, at least over the last couple of years, I'm sure you analyze how much of your income comes from donors, from grants, from business income. What do you recall what the percentages are as far as your sources?
Yeah. So as it pertains to the businesses we own, last year roughly 50% of our OpEx was offset through revenue we self-generate. So those small businesses in Africa and Haiti mixed with our thrift stores, anything that we are actually doing business in, offset about 50% of our OpEx.
That's great. Did that just kind of happen like it did with my nonprofit, where I don't know that. I mean, I certainly had a for-profit vein and a donor vein, but I didn't really know what would be the greatest source. And it's interesting that you saying it's about 50-50. When you consider that today and all that's going on and the more needs that you want to meet and the expansion, I'm sure that you're thinking about, does that seem to fit right? Or are you thinking that there needs to be some adjustments, either more business income or more donor income, or is it still kind of like 50-50, just growth?
Yeah, so I'd say that there's a difference between, current actuality and targets. So we have targets, and then we have, as far as ratios of revenue, and then we have, as we're growing, we actually need to grow every category, right? And
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
targets are based off of principles, and the principle for us is wanting to be more sustainable. But yeah, we as an entity want to reach millions of people on a weekly basis, touch millions of people. To get there, it's going to take more individual donors, more foundations that support us, more businesses and churches that support us, and we're also in the process of standing up more small businesses that we own and operate, which will kick off revenue. So we need to grow in all the categories.
Great. If we can, I'd like to shift to some pure leadership talk. Micah, a lot of our listeners, probably the majority of them, see themselves in that perspective. They're leading teams, they're leading organizations. They could be just starting out, middle managers, but there's also CEOs and senior pastors and et cetera who listen to the Today Counts show. And what I'd like to do, just to kind of give you a heads up, is with the time we have left, I'd like to talk about you as a leader, yourself, your person. And then I would like to talk about your people, the people that you have intentionally said, these are the ones that I've really got to invest in, give direction to, support to, encouragement to. I want to talk about that. And then I want to talk about your place in life today, your whether it's whatever season. How would you describe the season of Vapor? How would you describe the season of your life? So person, people, place, which is kind of most of our listeners know that is really what we exercise at Lead Today. The Today Counts show is a product of the Lead Today community, but those are the three spheres, circles that we try to, differentiate our conversations about. So, if I could follow that route, how do you take care of yourself? There's a lot of pressure in leading an organization. You're married, you have a family. What are some of the disciplines? What are some of the perspectives? What are some of the things that you do to uh, to create a healthy you?
Yeah, so I'd say it starts with a vision for what does the end game that health look like, and then back plan from there, and then try to create rhythms that support that outcome, systems, disciplines that buy that down, and then run and work those plays. And so for me, and really for how we lead at Vapor, our goal is to have spiritual, professional, and personal growth and health. And so if you were to run down that lane, like what is my spiritual vision for myself and my family? What is my physical vision for myself and my family? What does that look like? And then we actually have vision around that. We have a family vision statement and mission statement and values, we do time, talent, treasure, and influence planning, and there's scripture and attached to that, and vision attached to that. What's the end game? What's the end goal? So I think the first thing for me is like answer the why. Like, why are you doing it in the first place? Because discipline for discipline's sake doesn't work. At least for someone like me, it's got to lead to an outcome. So once that outcome is defined, here's the vision for my family, here's the vision for my health, here's the vision for my spirit man, here's the vision for that. Then it's what are those tactical steps that lead there? Discipline is Destiny, right? That's a book by Ryan Holiday. And we're really big into buying that down. So if you get very granular now, for me, from spiritual rhythms, it starts early in the morning. So I get up every morning by 4 a.m. I don't have an alarm in my room, don't have a phone in my room. I wake up no later than 4 on a normal basis.
And that gets earlier and earlier the older you get. I'll just let you know.
As I literally get out of bed, I try that the first thing that hits the floor is my knees. So my wife sleeps in a little bit longer, and so my goal is that before my feet hit the floor, my knees do, and it's my knees hit, and it's a very short by my bed. My wife is sleeping; it's quiet, and I just say, God, thank you for the sleep you gave me. Thank you for a new day. Help me to serve you well. Get up from there and go into the kitchen. I drink my cup of room temperature water, little Kinja, right? Get my Devo out, get my prayer journal out, and I go through rhythms. So it's time in the Word, it's time in worship. I use prayer frameworks, and basically my devotional period is from 4 to 5. Inside of that, there'll be a cup of coffee, there'll be a glass of water. I'll take my supplements, drink a bottle of coconut water, drink a bottle of water. Then I'll grab my next bottle of water, and I'll head to the gym. Gym is I go to the gym 5 days a week and do my routine there. While I'm there, I'm listening to podcasts, listening to leadership stuff. So now I'm getting a leadership stimulus while I'm exercising my body. Wrap up the gym about 6:30, come back, shower up, clean. I'm in the office between 7:30, and then attack the day. So if you were to get down into the minutia, for personal growth, there's sleep hygiene stuff that we're doing. There's a Sabbath once a week. There's time off prerequisites that we put. If you were to get into each of those, I could run the lane, and it would probably bore people. But there's a set of predecisions and disciplines and rhythms for my spirit man, for my personal, my physical health, for my sleep health, for family time. And so any one of those lanes you wanted to chase, I could kind of flare up. Well, here's the disciplines, the predecisions, the actions that we're taking to try to be healthy in those areas.
Excellent. So, Micah, it's pretty clear that you've given thought to your life, thought to who you are, going back to the name of your ministry and the scripture that has rung true for you, that life is a vapor. And so you're giving thought to that, and then you are executing, your strategies and ideas that come from that. For the business leader who is really stressed out right now, they're living in quadrant one all the time. Stephen Covey's everything is important and everything is urgent, and we could probably say living off of a lot of adrenaline. and they're hearing you say that, and they're coming up with, it didn't make them feel good, right? They're coming up with a statement that says, "Man, Micah's world must be totally different than mine." And we push back on those guys a little bit and those gals, and we say, "Wait a second, maybe, because the folks who do say that are often doing very little to nothing for their person, for themselves." And it kind of goes that way. What would you say to encourage them? Where should they start? If they're, if they're in a train wreck right now with their health, they're anxious, all the stuff that kind of comes with living a life on adrenaline, how would you encourage them? What is there a first step? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I would say the building blocks start for me spiritually. So to start with what is most important and then let it flow out of that. So I would say, hey, aim small, miss small, start small. So begin each day in, I'm going to spend time with God first thing, and I'm going to spend time in His Word, some prayer and worship, and I'm gonna start there. I believe in keystone habits. I think Charles Duhigg's book made a lot of sense there. There's a reality of a life of discipline, and if discipline is destiny, a life of discipline leads to the destiny you prefer, right? Or undisciplined living leads to the destiny you don't want, right? But it's built one block at a time. And so if you can get traction around something as small as, I'm going to not hit snooze, and I'm going to go before the Lord, I'm going to open His Word, I'm going to spend time with Him there, then that can lead to the next thing, So what I would say is start small, pick up the next discipline, and I would encourage you to start in your spirit man, because from your spirit man, flows so much.
Great, awesome. Let's move to people. The idea here is that if Jesus is our model, it seems pretty clear that it had a certain disposition for all people. But there was also another side of intentionality, and of course, the easy Sunday school answer is, he picked 12 disciples, and even three, inside of that, it appears. When you approach your life knowing that you yourself have a limited capacity to be everything for everybody, how do you choose your people? How are you being intentional about raising up, supporting, loving, whatever it is? Where are you at in your life on that right now?
Yeah, so I look at those as two distinct things. How do you choose people, and then how do you care for the ones you choose,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think if I look at the first, organizationally, for us, it's a very disciplined process. We do values-based interviewing, and so we're a culture formed entity. We have a vision, a mission, and a value set of values. Those shape Vapor. Those define what it means to be a fit here. And then we try to be rigorous around weeding out non-fits, and then making sure that our selection process is not as subjective. There's always going to be a certain amount of subjective in it, but instead of like, man, I like that person, they kind of seem neat, maybe we should pay them to work here, right? To really submit ourselves to a team interviewing process that's values based and has clear benchmarks in it, and allows us to take a process that can often be loose and subjective and bring as much objectivity to it. So when it comes to building team, we have a values-based, systematic, process-oriented approach that helps leaders have some counterbalance and not make rash decisions. So that's where I'd start.
Yeah, good. And what does your cadence look like in the sense of, who do you meet with most regularly, and how do you what has worked for you, right? Everybody has a different experience, but what's working for you in that kind of a cadence? I mean, I'm thinking about the fact that you've got people, on the other side of the world, and then you've got people right in your backyard. So kind of curious about that.
And I guess that would kind of be getting into the second side of the coin that I didn't speak to, right? Like how are you developing
Hmm.
those that you choose, and then what do meeting rhythms look like to support that? Would that be right? Am I headed in the right
Yeah,
direction?
yeah,
Yeah. So if we've got the right people, then it's how do we develop the right people? Our hiring and recruiting process that helps us make sure we're not wasting our time with the wrong people, and then every person that's here needs to be developed, cared for, mentored, so on and so forth. And so we really connect the two processes. So we like to say values based interviewing, values based recruiting, values based the onboarding, values based training, values based development, values based upward mobility. So everything for us is interconnected through the lens of we know who we are. We want to develop people, attract people, and ultimately accomplish work and drive progress through the lens of a well-formed center. So, like with that foundation, everything we do flows out of that. Getting very specifically into, okay, well, how do you meet, and how often do you meet, and what are your rhythms around that? We actually have structure that transcends any one manager. So we actually have meeting types, and those meeting types allow us to have a whole entity that has meeting structure and rhythm. There's that is carried out throughout the entity, and then we take those meeting types, and then out of that we have meeting cadence and meeting sequencing that happens. And so that transcends me, that transcends my role. Like, what are the types of meetings we need to have to do great tactical work, great strategic work, great formational work, family gatherings, have the right number of briefings and administrative meetings. And then we all, as leaders, are submitting to, we commit to these types of meetings at an agreed upon rate, and then some do more than others. So for me personally, my role is fitting inside of a construct, and I'm modeling what I expect to be carried out throughout the entity at scale. And everybody in Vapor Ministries has a one-on-one weekly with those that report to them, with your reports. So I do that as well. So on Tuesday, I'm meeting with my chief marketing officer and my chief business officer, chief international operating officer, chief financial officer. That every one of them is going to have a once a week meeting with me. In those meetings, the basic framework of that is developmental and tactical. So it's how are you doing spiritually? How are you doing professionally? How are you doing personally? How can I come alongside and love on and speak into your life? Okay, what's the tactical work we need to tackle? So that's foundational. Every team has a team meeting once a week. So those that report to me, we have our divisional leader meeting on Wednesday. Every Wednesday, we have a formational meeting where 631 people are on a team development study. It's a values-based training and development that happens at 7:45 a.m. Every Wednesday, our global leaders are on a leadership development call. It's a values-based leadership development call. So there's a framework of agreed upon meetings that we're carrying out throughout the entity that I am doing as well, and it cascades down through the entity. Because after I have my one-on-ones on Tuesday, and then our team meetings and development meetings on Wednesday, then my leaders are doing that with their teams all the way down through the entity. And so we can cascade. If I have a meeting on a one-on-one and then a team meeting on Tuesday and Wednesday, and there's something unique that breaks loose, we can cascade that communication around the globe and get back up to me in 7 days. Or we can have a public conversation with everybody on Wednesday. And so what it creates in the entity is the information flow, the real-time feedback, the connectivity relationally and tactically and strategically, is this orchestrated flow like a river that is flowing around the world and back again. So that's what my internal meeting structure looks like.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. It makes me wonder, how folks adapt, or the kind of the feedback that they provide to you and to the organization when they come from less disciplined organizations, where your cadence seems to be pretty consistent, and even not just the cadence of meetings, but the structure of them and the motive behind them, and all of that. So that's fascinating. To
And
me.
I'll just say broadly, like we have to ask the question, like, what are the types of meetings that are needed for us to do our mission effectively at scale? Then what's the cadence that makes sense to do them in, and then to make sure that we're not reacting always as an organization, but we're in a proactive posture. So we're getting ahead of, and we're leading intentionally versus reacting because there's all this noise because we didn't get ahead of it. And then it's, is there a sequence that makes sense? And if there is, why not work with the wind and go ahead and structure that way, and gain synergy versus have so much sideways energy because we're so responsive in everything we do. We don't have enough connectivity. We aren't driving. We say we have these values on the wall, but they're not lived out in the hall because we don't have any formational structure or rigor or rhythm around them. We say we want to execute effectively, but like, how are we refining our tactics and how are we pressing those down? So again, we start with the end in mind and then say, like, what types of activities would be needed? What's the cadence, so that it's not too much? What's the sequence? And then now it's run the play.
Micah, if we were to take on the third P, which I call place, and we translate it in the context of our discussion right now to the season, how would you describe what season of life is Vapor in? What season of life are you in as the executive director, effectively the CEO of Vapor? I didn't really, tee that up for you earlier, so that might be coming, a bit of but you seem pretty quick on your feet. So
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we're really like scaling up right now, and so again, not knowing the inside speak, I think there's sometimes you're in a decline. Maybe maybe you got headwinds, momentum, and so we've tried to be. When we walked into COVID, we had a sense of momentum, and we were beginning to expand in some places, and no one knew what was going to happen in COVID, right? And we pulled our global teams together, 600 plus people on a call, and I said, look, we have no idea what's going to happen on the backside of this, but we're going to be faithful in our vision, our mission. We're going to press forward. And if we have to cut muscle, then we'll start cutting muscle, but it's all hands on deck. We're not going to respond in fear. Let's go serve the poor at mass. Let's go. Right. And by the grace of God, we got to the backside of COVID and we weren't cutting muscle. We were managing some momentum, and we began to ask God to give us clarity on vision for the future, and the vision He began to give us was pretty big. And so we're actually working against serious scale up right now because we have 631 team members. Over the next 8 years, we believe we'll have around 1,000. So we're bringing on another 400 team members. We're serving hundreds of thousands of people. But we believe on a weekly basis, and we believe we'll be serving millions on a weekly basis over the next 8 years. So the capital requirements for that, the systems integrity for that, the people development pipelines for that. We want to serve. We want to populate heaven. We want to see extreme poverty. We want to be on the tip of the sword and see folks in extreme poverty that are starving and dying needlessly now be able to be served and have a high quality of life. I mean, those things motivate us, but to get to where we're trying to go, it's going to take stuff that's like outside of anything that we could make happen. So our mode right now is like we are constructing, building, advancing, backfilling, refortifying infrastructure, and scaling up because we want to not just get there. We got to be able to sustain it when we're there. And that's our thought process. That's the season we're in.
Fantastic. That sounds like an exciting place, keeping everybody on their toes, and how are we going to do that, right? How are we going to do that? We're doing this. How are we going to do that? So that gets people energized. Micah, for those who are really interested in what you're doing, or they want to look into it some more, where would you send them? How would they learn more about Vapor Ministries?
Yeah, I'll go to vaporministries.org. Someone wants to hear more about the story behind it. There is a book that's come out, and there's conversations about a movie. A documentary has been released. And so you could go to vaporministries.org, go to the About section, and get that free documentary. You could get the book, Dying for Purpose, at Amazon. All the proceeds go to the ministry. So you'd be supporting the ministry in that way. And then, of course, if you want to find out how to be involved and participate, sow into the ministry, you can do so to the donate section on our vaporministries.org page. You can also follow us on our social channels, Micah McElveen, at all those Twitter, Instagram, whatever, and then Vapor on those things as well.
I'm with you.
Vapor Ministries.
Vapor Ministries. This is, Micah, I feel like today we just scratched the surface. There is so much more that you can share, that we can learn from you. But again, I want to just thank you for the time that you've invested into this podcast and to all of our listeners by enriching our lives. And I'm going to stay connected to you. I'm going to be chasing you down. So you might have to be looking over your shoulder here and there. I find you to be extremely inspiring. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, sir, and thank you for your contributions to the marketplace and the church house, and for really bridging God's kingdom. Because the truth of the matter is people don't have to go to church. They got to go to work. And the last I checked, the earth and all that is therein belongs to the Lord. And so there is no separation between the secular and the sacred, in the sense that the kingdom is to be established and built in all dominions, all domains. So thank you for bringing winsomeness and leadership and experience into both sectors.
Well, that's kind. I appreciate that. And we serve our missions, and we do it with our whole hearts.